Roughly 15 to 20 years ago, Anglo-American popular culture was profoundly shaped by a group of highly visible atheist intellectuals, whom the media and academia dubbed the New Atheists. The most prominent were Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, A.C. Grayling, and Michael Shermer. Grayling became known largely through public debates, and Shermer through his Skeptic magazine. Yet it was Dawkins, Dennett, Harris, and Hitchens who truly dominated bestseller lists, YouTube clips, and television appearances. Their cultural impact was so striking that they earned the dramatic label, the Four Horsemen of religion's anticipated apocalypse. Their rise began with Sam Harris's The End of Faith, published in 2004, followed by Richard Dawkins's The God Delusion and Daniel Dennett's Breaking the Spell, both published in 2006. And then Christopher Hitchens' God is Not Great, published in 2007. Unlike earlier skeptics who had merely criticized religion as irrational, the New Atheists argued that religion could no longer be socially tolerated. It had to be openly mocked as irrational and actively resisted in every sphere of public influence. Inevitably, the New Atheist phenomenon faded. Part of its decline stemmed from the aging and deaths of its central figures. Hitchens died in 2011. Dennett in 2024. Today, only Dawkins, now in his 80s, and Harris remain active. But social commentators had already begun declaring New Atheism dead by the mid-2010s, and public interest plummeted after 2014, when the movement fractured internally over identity politics and culture war issues, alienating many politically progressive atheists. Even so, the Four Horsemen's core message is worth revisiting. It rested on a widely held but rarely questioned assumption in popular thought, namely, that experimental science and religion are inherently incompatible social institutions, locked in unavoidable, and therefore perpetual, antagonism. In Letter to a Christian Nation, Harris captured this view sharply.
The claims of religion are intrinsically in conflict with the claims of science, because they are claims made on terrible evidence. The success of science often comes at the expense of religious dogma. The maintenance of religious dogma always comes at the expense of science. The conflict between science and religion is reducible to a simple fact of human cognition and discourse. Either a person has good reasons for what he believes, or he does not.
Dawkins expressed a similar sentiment in The God Delusion.
If the demise of God will leave a gap, different people will fill it in different ways. My way includes a good dose of science, the honest and systematic endeavor to find out the truth about the real world.
From this framing, the New Atheists concluded that religion, because it opposes science, is also incompatible with modern public life. For them, however, science and religion were merely proxies. The true adversaries were faith and reason. Harris complained in Letter to a Christian Nation.
It is time we acknowledged a basic feature of human discourse. When considering the truth of a proposition, one is either engaged in an honest appraisal of the evidence and logical arguments, or one isn't. Religion is the one area of our lives where people imagine that some other standard of intellectual integrity applies. It is time that we admitted that faith is nothing more than the license religious people give one another to keep believing when reasons fail. While believing strongly without evidence is considered a mark of madness or stupidity in any other area of our lives, faith in God still holds immense prestige in our society.
Dawkins went further in The God Delusion, condemning the very act of rearing children in religious faith.
More generally, and this applies to Christianity no less than to Islam, what is really pernicious is the practice of teaching children that faith is a virtue. Faith is an evil precisely because it requires no justification and brooks no argument. Teaching children that unquestioned faith is a virtue primes them, given certain other ingredients that are not hard to come by, to grow up into potentially lethal weapons for future jihads or crusades. If children were taught to question and think through their beliefs, instead of being taught the superior virtue of faith without question, it is a good bet there would be no suicide bombers.
So throughout their work, the New Atheists evidently operated from a flawed understanding of faith and an uncritical, scientific view of reason. They defined religious faith as belief without sufficient evidence, or even in willful defiance of evidence, and portrayed scientific reasoning as the sole, all-encompassing path to genuine knowledge, built on pure logical inference from verifiable principles. This led them to revive the tired faith versus reason conflict or fight model of the relationship between religion and science. This conflict model stands in sharp contrast to the cooperation model found in the West's perennial philosophy. That tradition has long offered careful, precise analyses of both faith and reason, and of how the human will directs them. It harmonizes the act of faith with key operations of the intellect, recognizing that every rational inference presupposes some act of faith. In doing so, it exposes the hidden assumptions behind the new atheists' concepts and dismantles their conflict framework. Pope John Paul II imagined this cooperation model poetically. In his 1998 encyclical Fides et Ratio,
faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth.
In that poetic image, faith and reason are rightly understood and their supposed conflict dissolves. This video series will examine the persistent misconceptions of faith and reason that the new atheists revived. Drawing on biblical, patristic, scholastic, and magisterial sources, it will explain and defend the perennial philosophy's cooperation or flight model.